Thank you. Good morning, everybody. For the next 5 minutes. Welcome. This is a work session of the Anchorage Assembly. Today is August 1, 2024, August 2, 2024, I'm sorry. And it is 11:53 a.m. We'll start, and it's a work session to discuss and meet with candidates for 2024-25 Assembly Youth Representative. We'll start with introductions. Mr. Martinez.
George Martinez.
Mark Littlefield.
Scott Myers.
Meg Zolotov.
I'm Christopher Constant, and when you want to use the mic, the green light comes on, and then just say your name for the record.
I'm Kennedy Grady.
Thank you.
Bruno Buckman.
Mika Bell.
Thank you. And we were just joined by Karen Braga. Just so you know, everything is recorded in this room, and it goes up on the permanent record. There's maybe a YouTube that's on the Muni's YouTube page. Also on, okay, so welcome everybody again. And if you have any questions from the members, you could get my attention or try to put yourself in the queue by sending me a text. And again, thank you for being here. It's once again time to select our youth representative. The purpose of this work session is to get to know the candidates for the youth representative and alternate positions. The selection process or responsibility falls to the chair in the code, but in following the process set out by my predecessor, now Mayor LaFrance, we are going to do these interviews with the full assembly so you can all hear from the prospective candidates. We had 15 applicants this year, which was quite amazing. We had a wealth of options, and it was very tough to narrow down the candidates to the ones we're set to interview today. We originally selected 5 candidates for the interview stage. One withdrew last week, and one had something come up today, so they couldn't attend. So we have 3 candidates before us today. As a reminder, the youth representative and alternate terms are for the upcoming school year, and they'll be seated with the assembly during regular and special meetings. They may join committees and participate in work sessions and other informal meetings. And they will receive the same materials presented to assembly members for regular and special meetings and give a yes or no preferential vote on each item up for vote, with the exception of matters related to alcohol or marijuana licensing or special land use permits. The selected candidates will receive training and orientation and be matched with an assembly mentor. And assembly members, if you're interested in being a mentor, let's talk. So to our youth candidates, I want to thank you for being here in this final days of your summer vacation, just before it's time to get back to school. And I've heard from folks that it might feel a little intimidating in here because it's a big room, and here you are feeling kind of yourselves on the public record for the first time maybe. But I want you to understand that this is a welcoming space, and we're welcoming people, and do your best to just take some breaths, be yourself, and just, that's it, be authentic. Very few of us up here were involved in government when we were your age. And so this is great leadership that you're already showing by putting your name into the ring and by showing up for the conversation, just applying. So we're going to start this session by giving each of you a few minutes to share a bit about yourselves and what you feel you can add or bring to the assembly. Once you've all had a chance to respond, I'll open the floor to my colleagues to ask questions, and we'll allow each of you an opportunity to respond. And at the end, we'll allow each of you to make a closing statement. When it's your turn, as I said, but so that the light is green, and then when you're done speaking, press the button again to turn it off. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Mika.
Yes, hello again. I am Mika Bell. I'll be a senior at service this year, and I'm in Assembly District 4. I first started getting more involved in the community my sophomore year when I joined the Student Advisory Board, which is a meeting of all the student governments. And I also joined Anchorage Youth Vote the same year, which is a really great organization that has allowed me to do a lot of things to further connect with my community and make positive change. And so I'm really excited for this opportunity to be able to continue to do that at a deeper level. And I'm really excited for all that I can learn from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bruno.
I'm Bruno Buckman. I am going into my junior year at West, and I'm in District 3. I started getting involved in stuff my freshman year. When I joined my school's student government, I've been unable to fit that into my schedule since then. And so my sophomore year, I picked up more Key Club and Amnesty. I'd been slightly involved in them before, but I currently hold an officer position in both of those as treasurer in Key Club and vice president in Amnesty at West. I am also involved in community work through a little bit of Music for Hearts, as well as some outreach from the Anchorage Youth Symphony, uh, as well as some work that I do through, for instance, judging middle school debate and working with DDF.
Can you describe what ministry and DEF are? Or not ministry, Amnesty and DEF?
Amnesty International is a association that is devoted to just various human rights issues, and DDF is drama debate forensics. I do a few types of debate and help middle schoolers with it.
Perfect. Thank you. Kennedy.
My name is Kennedy Grady. I live in District 1, but I go to Bartlett in District 5. I have been doing stuff for my community since I was in 8th grade due to my mom, who's the head of the BIPOC educators. I have also done stuff for backpack drives and food drives, and also clothing drives, because in my neighborhood, there's a lot of homeless people around, so we did a big clothing drive.
Thank you very much. All right. So now that we've had introductions, I would like to go around and see if any members have questions. Anyone? Mr. Myers, Scott.
Thank you guys for being here. It's good to see students getting involved. I was involved in student government when I was in high school, so I think it's a good opportunity for you to learn. And certainly sitting at the assembly is going to be a long, tired, probably boring opportunity for you to learn more about the inner workings of city government. So I applaud you for being willing to sit up and do that on a Tuesday night. Anyway, so I guess what are you looking forward to learning the most about the inner workings of the municipality of Anchorage by serving on the assembly?
I'll start in the middle this time, Bruno.
I'm interested in more involvement in local government and sort of just to see how the process works. Most of what I'd like to do, if I am the youth representative, is sort of focus on the assembly working more with youth organizations. For instance, during the last year, Key Club attempted to sort of do more organized events, and there are not many other resources, not many other associations, and I'd like to focus on making the city one of those and making it more open to working with youth.
Kennedy.
What are you most looking forward to learning or bringing to the table as the youth representative?
I'm more looking forward to how everything works and how you guys do things and learning about that, because it's kind of in the background, things just happen and we don't really know how.
Thank you. And
I mean, I think my answer is kind of in your question. I'm looking forward to witnessing the inner workings of the assembly and to the possibility to be involved in that, to learn more about it, and then to pass that knowledge on to my peers. Because I think when it comes to government, there is a lot that youth don't know, and I think that we could benefit from knowing. And I hope to be able to sort of be a bridge that connects my peers with what's happening locally. Thank you.
thank you. Ms. Braga, Karen.
Thanks, Chair. I am curious if you've followed along with city politics at all. What is one issue that you've been most interested in that you've seen lately happening in city government?
Start with you this time, Kennedy.
Recently, there was basically last year, sort of last year at Bartlett, we did a protest. Other schools are also doing protests because they're taking away, one of the bills, or we're taking away internet. And for people who don't have, or not internet, but it was computers or internet, whatever it was, people at home, they wouldn't be able to take classes or anything if they didn't have any electronics, because they either didn't have internet or they didn't have a computer. And that bill was stopping that access. And if we were to go to a lot of our weather, it'll stop us from going to school, or another outbreak of COVID that's really bad, they're not going to be able to be caught up in school, and then they're behind, and then when they get back, they're not going to know what to do. And for my brother, that was a major problem because he was behind, but I was moving forward because I already took those classes. But during that period, he was really stuck, and he struggled in 9th grade because of that.
Thank you. And Mika.
So the last 2 years and the last year especially, I've been really focused on advocating for more funding for schools. A lot of that is with the Student Advisory Board. In my sophomore year, about a year and a half ago, I think, I went to Juneau for the Youth Advocacy Institute and I testified in support of Senate Bill 52. And it's through experiences like those that I feel I've really been able to make a bigger impact. I also do a lot of work through Anchored Youth Vote, spreading civic education and spreading resources that help kids realize like why they should vote and how they can vote once they turn 18.
Bruno.
One of the things that happened relatively recently, because this was my freshman year when I was on my school student government, is there was a cut of city funding to a few programs that the school, while not directly affiliated with, was sort of using to encourage sort of extracurriculars and stuff like that. There was a series of cuts there, and I think that a lot of things that I've seen in the extracurriculars that I do, they haven't fully recovered because it was sort of an added safety net. It was things in related fields that they could go into, and that never fully bounced back. That was really visible in a lot of sports, and yeah.
Everybody, Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you. I really don't have a question for you. I just have a broad spectrum statement. I really appreciate the youth coming forward. I think it's a great thing for America and this country and this city. The biggest thing that you guys need to do, whether or not you get selected or not, is don't stop asking questions. You have in front of you here in the assembly and all of your people that's involved in government a wealth of information, vast, endless pit of, information and longevity. People have been here forever. Don't stop asking questions. Don't stop moving forward. I am excited that you guys are here today. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Mr. Littlefield. I actually have a question. It's a different kind of question. So it's about school district policy, and we're not the school board. But we do fund the schools and we work directly with them. In fact, we have a joint meeting coming up pretty soon with the school board. I have two questions, but I'll only ask one this time. And the first one is, we've been hearing lots about the conversion to the academy form of education at the school district, which is like the kind of learning academy. Schools will have a career focus within them, several tracks, and students will opt in and get some skills and experience. And by the time they graduate, perhaps have a job. And so I would love to hear your take on this new academy program, just broadly. And we'll start with Mika.
Yes, so as a senior, I will be missing this program that's being set in place, but I think it's really great. I've heard a lot of concerns from my peers, but when it comes to my personal view, even if people end up choosing a path that they don't enjoy, I think figuring that out earlier rather than later will be really beneficial. And even if it's something you don't end up wanting doing in life, establishing connections and establishing skill sets is still really important. Some concerns with people that I've heard is having kids choose what they want to do so young is a lot of pressure. But I think it will help people to start thinking about their future earlier, which in my eyes can only be beneficial.
Thank you, Bruno.
I think that the academies are a good idea in theory. I don't see a way for them to work logistically. Currently, there was an enormous issue with budget deficit problems and so on, and the academies were funded off of a series of grants, right? That's not a sustainable model to fund them on or to fund anything on. I have had to watch West repeatedly cut everything they could because there were cuts, and a grant to establish a new program doesn't guarantee that it sticks around forever.
Thank you. Kennedy.
I think it would be beneficial mostly because I went to King Tech for summer school and I was able to really see what I would want to do in the future because we had people teaching us that and also the different skills that you could do. However, I also think they should be more open to do things outside of trade skills, not just welding or things like mechanics and stuff like that. Because I think there's more broad skills than trade skills. There's more things to do than just that. But that's really all we have in Alaska.
All right, thank you. So we were just joined by Ms. Brawley for the record. And so any other questions? Ms. Alatel.
So, one of the things I like most about local government is you can have an idea and see it go into implementation all within the span of a matter of months or a year, to truly, I think, impact your community where you live at home in the moment. What would be, youth reps can't bring policy, but they can work with other assembly members to do so. So if you could kind of pick that one thing that you think you could do to help make the city better from your perspective, what would it be?
This time we start with Bruno.
I think that the ideal thing to get done as youth representative would be to get there to be greater involvement between the city and student organizations that focus on stuff for students, for instance, and just for the city in general. For instance, Key Club. I'm in Key Club, Amnesty, and GSA, although I'm not an officer in my school's Gender Sexuality Alliance. And I think that with city support and with city involvement, organizations like Key Club that last year, for instance, had an initiative to help with homelessness could get a lot more done. And with the greater organization available here, I think we could change stuff and more could be accomplished than just what can be done with a small fundraising budget and high schoolers.
Kennedy.
I think more involvement with the community would help, actually listening to people and then their concerns. Like, for example, I had a lot of concerns about like our school changes. And while that is important, we also have to think about what I feel is the main problem, at least, is childcare. Because childcare is really hard for anyone, especially the pricing and all that.
Thank you. Mika.
So I think the other two already gave really great answers. Connecting with, the future of Anchorage, the future of Alaska is really important, especially when I feel a lot of youth these days are dispirited and don't think there's much we can do to change what's happening, even though we can. So providing more resources and perhaps collaborating with already youth-centered organizations would be really beneficial. But since those two already gave a similar answer, I'll also say something else. I think that with the state of the planet, working on environmental issues could only be beneficial. And I think that's always something to keep in mind as well.
Thank you. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize for being late. I'll go back and watch the recording for the bit. And thank you for all being interested in this position. I have two questions. One is, you all mentioned kind of better connections with youth or better engagement with youth from the government side or from the assembly side. I'd be curious if you guys have ideas about, there's bringing youth to us at our meetings, right? And there's challenges or just it can be very intimidating. Are there ways that you would, just off the top of your head or things to think about that you would see bringing government into schools or into, community spaces outside of school? For example, presenting to a class, for example. I know that's one way, but are there ways that that you think may be successful? That's the first question. And actually, if it's okay, maybe I'll ask that one and then ask the second one. So go ahead.
So the first one this time will be Kennedy.
I think more programs would help. I think a lot of people would be more interested in programs, especially other youth. For example, I think for student government, a lot of student government would like to probably talk to people like you guys and sort of figure out how they can also change their schools and learn about that.
Mika?
So, one way that I think would kind of get you an in with the youth is through already existing organizations. I'm a member of Anchorage Youth Vote, and we do a lot of great work with civic education. And so perhaps reaching out through Youth Vote, which is already a youth-led program, would help. Also, I think if there were more, like you said, presentations at schools, we don't really get that many officials coming to our schools and really like talking to us face to face. I think part of that is the school's fault, and they could be doing more, and individual teachers could be reaching out more to the students. I think it's really an issue on every end, but just have everyone collaborating together, I think, would be a way to get more youth involved.
I hate to echo what Mika said without adding a whole bunch, but I do think that working with student organizations is what needs to happen. People want to get involved, they want to see change in their communities. It's just that a lot of the time it doesn't look like that's directly possible, or like there's more than one thing that can get done, right? Usually organizations like Key Club or Amnesty have to focus on one thing that they're going to do for like an entire year. And most of the time, that's just because that's the first thing they hear about. And if there was greater availability of information about ongoing city initiatives and stuff like that, I think that there would be greater youth participation.
Kennedy? I'm sorry. I'm multi-tracking here. And you had a second question?
Yeah, this one is open-ended, and I realize that we won't have space today to answer questions, but I'm curious kind of what you're curious about in government, you know, not just necessarily assembly, but just things that you've always wondered maybe, or things that you say, why is it like that? Or, you know, just things that you maybe don't understand or don't have visibility in on local government, for example, that you would love to learn more about.
Mika?
Just how it works, really. I'm at my school, seniors take government, and since I will be a senior this year, I haven't taken a government class yet. And I think maybe my individual self-initiated education is perhaps a little bit lacking regarding how government works. And I'm curious to see how the individual in government goes through their day and the things they consider and the work they put in. I'd really like to see how that is, because I think when we talk about government or about politicians, it's kind of all generalized. So you don't really see more of the individual aspect of it and what's really going on other than the more broader topics.
Bruno?
I think a lot of the time, the way that legislature, like the stuff that is being written into law, or like a new initiative is proposed, is sort of abstracted. And I'm interested in the details of how individual things are proposed and sort of how the city decides what to pursue, what makes it to the point where it gets voted on. Yeah.
Thank you. Kennedy?
Really how things come into place, for example, because we really only hear about, you know, larger governments like the president or the mayor, but it's rare to hear of like what really any of you guys are doing. And I think it'd be more like helpful to anyone if we like really know what was happening other than like the big people who are doing everything, because there's also other people who are doing things before them to have them do those things.
Thank you. Okay, I have a few more people in the queue. We'll start with George.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Martinez.
Hello, y'all. Thank you for being here with us. Just to put that on the record, I deeply appreciate your time and your voices be heard in these conversations, and then all of the interesting work that you do in the community. I think that's really great, as many of my colleagues have already mentioned. There was when this item was first being brought to the assembly in terms of creating this role, one of the comments from an assembly member at the time was, well, why don't they go to community councils instead and start there? And so my question would be just to get a sense of how many of you have ever even attended your local community council, and what is your community council, if you know it? It's not, it's not a trick question, but I forgot who that was. And I thought I had a name of an assembly member, but I didn't want to out it at this point.
That's fine.
Right.
Yeah, I could imagine who it was.
Yes.
We'll start with you, bro.
Quite honestly, I've not attended a local meeting. The main reason I applied for this is because this was one of the first things that I ended up hearing about. I decided at the end of last year to get involved in some local government stuff, and this jumped out at me, and I decided to apply. I can't say that I have a ton of prior experience in the community, but I can say that I'm interested in learning more.
Thank you.
Kennedy?
Things like community council is not really talked about, so I have actually not heard of it. I heard of this first because of like what my mom does, but I'm not even sure if she's heard of things like community council. I don't know if they have one like for maybe our district or neighborhoods, but that would be a more helpful thing if we actually were told about these things and more pamphlets, like even in schools and stuff, so we know to go to them.
There are probably a number of us who have attended community councils with your mom, George.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mika.
So I have not attended a community council meeting. As a member of student advisory board, we kind of have our own little meetings. Sometimes we hear from like school board members or other representatives. As a student athlete and an advocate, I am a little short on time. And so I think that is one of the things that's kind of stopped me from taking that first step. I think the closest I've gotten is watching the school board meeting recordings online. But I think that's why I applied for this opportunity, is because I want to attend things in person and I want to be more involved in the process. And this is a way that I could do that.
Let me follow up, Chair, if you could, sticking in the same lane. How old do you need to be for your voice to matter? When does your voice matter in Anchorage? That's the question. How old do you think one needs to be for your voice to matter?
So we'll just go ahead in the same order because it's the same questioner. So we'll start with Mika.
I think, well, your voice always matters, but there is a certain point where you are more aware of what's going on in your community. And for some that might be middle school, I think for me and for the majority of people, it is probably once you get into high school, and starting student government is more involved with the actual government portion in high school. And so to give a vague answer, it's when someone becomes aware of what's happening in their community, because you really need that knowledge to then, put your voice out. But to give a specific answer, I'd say freshman year of high school, people typically become more engaged if they are going to.
I like putting numbers on stuff. So I'd say 16. And that's off a few things. I do think someone's voice always matters, but I think they have to understand sort of what they want to speak about, what they want to use their voice for. And 16 is convenient, but also having been a freshman in the past, it's a time when you won't have heard about a lot of local opportunities, and it's a large transitionary period. So I'd sort of say 16 or sophomore year, just because it's more convenient. You're more stable at that point.
Can be.
I think around probably 8th grade, 9th grade, because I know, at least personally for me, the first time I spoke was around that time, because it was sort of when they were bringing in masks to schools, and that had became the topic. Yes, because I was going right into 9th grade, and like seeing what they were talking about, it kind of made like not me feel left out, but like high schoolers in general, because it kind of felt belittled, because they kind of made it seem like we didn't really know how to make friends on our own without not wearing a mask, or like they just kept coming up with things that were sort of ridiculous, because we can still make friends even if we can't see someone's face. It's really not, it wasn't as deep as they were trying to make it. And it was like, it's easier. I also think it's easier like to like let out your voice is when you really know like what you want and what you're comfortable like like how you're comfortable like talking to people, and if you're like confident.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to appreciate that you allowed me that. And just to frame the questions specifically, I think you're all exactly right. And I think as you grow, you all are seeing yourselves as part of a pipeline to other students, other youth of our community. And I asked that question because there are spaces that have dedicated to exclude all voices, and all voices are not necessarily heard. And I think it's really important that that we continue to make these spaces available for your participation and to help us bridge to more youth in our community. So thank you for your responses.
Now we're going to roll back to the queue. I have myself, Ms. Brung, and Ms. Brawley. So I have two questions. They're kind of tied together. Back to your thoughts on how the schools are operated. There is a school time change happening right now that is going to affect you because you're all going into school. So your thoughts on the school time change? That's the intro to the question. But the second part of the question is this project is a time-consuming project. It is late, at least 2 nights a month. Like it could go as late as 10 or 11 p.m. We usually let the youth member go around 10 because of school. We have reading to be done. If you want to be ready to go, the reading can be like this and it can be like this, and you have to learn tactics to read it. But so starting with the school start times, let's move into a conversation about the time it will take you to do this job and your thoughts on that. And that's going to start with Bruno.
I don't know how to feel about school start times. On one hand, I do want to sleep later. On the other hand, I do sports. I currently do cross country, and I've also done cross country skiing and track. And all of those things, like cross country, can go to like 5. And that was when we were getting out at 2. With how the schedule's been pushed back, it is going to be better to sleep more. It is in some ways good for student health, but also there are downsides there. Additionally, if now that we're starting at 8:15, an additional 30 minutes were also added onto the school day, as previously middle school held the schedule of 8:15 to 2:45 as opposed to 8:15 to 3:15, which I think if that had been not added, that would be very beneficial for extracurriculars and just anything after school. I can make time for it. I currently do debate and a few other things like that, and I know how to be organized. I know how to get through reading. I will be available until around like 10. That is something that I can definitely do.
Thank you. Kennedy.
I feel the same way. It's kind of hard because I would also like to have like more time to sleep, but also I have a job. So now with the times, I kind of get shorter hours because before I have a job and I do dance, and we'll have practice after dance or practice after school. Those times are going to be cut shorter due to that. And that's especially hard with a job because now I'm going to be going there later. I don't know if I'll get penalties for going later. I can talk to people regarding that, but it's still difficult because some places, or at least for other people, they might miss work because of that, or like not even really be able to properly work due to their hours and school. And the only really time you might be able to work is during the summer because you don't have school or anything.
And how about your thoughts on managing time if you were in this job where you would have at least a couple nights a month where it goes pretty late, and choose your own adventure, there are plenty of other meetings to attend.
For this, I think considering it kind of ends in the sort of like middle of the day, afternoon for school, I feel like I'd be able to make time due to the fact that I can, luckily I have people where I can call off work and have other people take in for me. And I'm not too worried about my siblings, so I can definitely make time for things like this.
Thank you, Mika.
Yes, I have seen, well, according to the research, and the research I'm referencing is what was in the slideshows on the asdk12.org website, shows that it's really beneficial. And for myself, I would agree, but I also don't work a job. And I'm an early riser, so I'd probably still wake up at the same time I did last year and be able to do more work in the morning when I'm not as tired. So for me personally, I think it is beneficial, but I do hear a lot of people's concerns about it. When it comes to the school start times combined with this assembly job, um, I think it would be rough at first for me. Um, but the more structure I have, the more I'm able to succeed. And sometimes structure could just be filling up the day, because my better days tend to be when I'm doing a lot of things that day. So I will be able to attend all the meetings, and I am able to provide transportation for myself because I have a license. Um, and I think this work is really important. So I'm willing to prioritize it. But when it comes to looping back a little bit, school start times for everyone, I think that it will take a lot of adjustment, but I ultimately think it is the better course of action. And things like jobs for students will eventually shift to match the start times. One major concern right now is childcare. I know there's a shortage of childcare in Anchorage, but again, I think with time that will match school start times, and so I think these start times are a good step toward the future.
Thank you. A few more people in the queue. We have next Ms. Braga.
Thank you. I had community council on my list. I used to be the president of Scenic Foothills, and we really wanted to have a youth come regularly and just could not figure out the connection. The principals sometimes from Bartlett would come to the community council, and we never got it worked out. So one question I have is, you're saying that you don't really have information about those meetings. And what would be the best way for a community council leader to reach out to schools and invite participation? Who would be the point of contact, like student advisory lead or whatever? Who would it be? And then the other question that I had kind of got talked about was the time commitment. And so community councils are kind of 2-hour meetings, and this is another beast. It's like a 6-hour meeting. And so, plus you guys leave earlier though, but so not to scare you off, but I think you answered my question about time commitments, but how could we reach out? So even if you didn't get this position, we would love to grab some of you to start attending the community councils.
So I don't think that was a question.
Yeah, who do we reach out to?
Okay, then we'll start with Kennedy.
I think for one, maybe having an online platform. There's a lot of teenagers that will be online, and that's really how I'm also able to see things, because for my district or for my school is they'll post things or information online or through Facebook. And then there's also there's really just that a lot of people will see something, then they'll follow only because they're in that community. Like for Anchorage or the school district or the schools, they're most likely going to follow that because they either go to that school or they live in that community.
I think the best way to reach out to students is just directly through teachers. So contact the school administration and see if they can get all the social study teachers one day will talk to their class about the city councils. At my school, we have something called Fuel, which is just once a week, and we do various stuff like learn about mental health or other things. It's just a space where the counselors and sometimes other students can introduce things. And so that would be a really great time to reach every single student in the school at once. You mentioned student advisory board. A lot of things go through student advisory board. So we take a lot of surveys and we're often given information to then take back to our schools and to our peers. That's also a way to do it, but I think the number one way would be to reach directly to schools and say, hey, can you have teachers reach out to students directly? And maybe suggest teachers offer incentives, because students really love incentives.
I think that reaching out through teachers is a great way to do that. If you offer extra credit for going to one meeting, at least a few kids will end up going to another one, even if there's nothing attached to it. So just like getting kids more aware through it being brought up by a social studies teacher, brought up by anyone. I don't know how student gov works at other schools, but for West at least, there's like a little weekly news thing. And that's the exact sort of thing that they like to bring up there. That's the exact sort of thing that they like to tell kids about. And yeah.
All right. Kennedy, did you get a chance with that? Yeah, good. I'm multitasking here. Next in the queue, I have Anna.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that I observed from our prior youth representative is, there were a couple situations where, and it must have been difficult at the time, but he really spoke his mind, or there was something controversial really, or there's times when we have to take votes that are difficult for one reason or another, right? Just there's not an easy or obvious choice. So I'm going to pull out kind of a classic job interview question, because I know things like this are also good practice for you all as you start to think about your future lives. The classic question is, can you describe a situation where you changed your mind on something? But I'll also say if something isn't coming to mind for that particular one, another kind of version of that is, can you kind of describe a time where you really had to make a difficult choice and what was involved in that? So I'll leave it at that and see how you guys like to respond.
Start with Kennedy.
I think through one of the times I had to make a difficult choice was through, let's say, probably school, and then, or not school specifically here, but when going to a pre-college, it was kind of difficult, like really knowing like what to do, because there's a lot of things I had to change for my assignments, even though I really didn't want to, but I knew I had to in order to get them done. And like in the end, I was actually ended up like feeling a lot better about the work because I actually like made that choice, even though I didn't want to. It made things a lot easier rather than stressing about it.
Go ahead.
So at Service, I'm part of the Socratic Seminar Program, and this is maybe a little different from what you're talking about, but we discuss a lot of difficult pieces, and once we finish going through the piece as individuals or in small groups, we sit together as an entire class and we just talk about the piece and pose questions. And so there can be a lot of different interpretations of the text, and so that is an environment where I find myself changing my mind pretty often. And sometimes I've been arguing for a point and I'm like really set on it, and then someone says something and it totally blows my mind. It's like, I didn't think about that. And I think that environment has gotten me really used to being comfortable with changing my mind, being willing to accept other sides of it and realize like, hey, I was wrong, or hey, your point makes a lot of sense. When it comes to difficult decisions, as someone who does a lot of extracurriculars, unfortunately, I can't do it all. And so when I find myself having to choose one program over another, it's always really difficult because I would love to do everything.
Bruno.
I think one thing where I've had to change my mind has definitely been debate. You have to argue both sides of it, and I've had to learn a lot about some very niche topics that I'm probably not going to use again, but it was really fun doing that. The main thing that I've had for difficult choices like recently was leaving the immersion program so I could do the IB program at West. Spanish immersion is weird. Unlike Russian immersion, you cannot be in it and also in the IB program. And I may want to go to a college out of the US. So I decided I wanted to do the IB program, and that was tough because I've been in the Spanish immersion program since kindergarten. That was 11 years of progress in a language, but yeah.
I'll just observe too, a theme I heard from all of your answers was really time management, and there's all the things you want to do, and then there's what you have capacity to do. And I would say that's definitely one of the hardest parts of this job, and certainly the youth representative job as well.
So you all gave the right answer is what I think she just said. George.
All right, thank you, Chair. Just as an offer of a resource, the municipal ombudsman, Daryl Hess, just reminded me that the Federation of Community Councils is the umbrella organization that supports all of the local community councils, and they're working on their revamping their communication and their website with a new executive director. And so it'd be encouragement for the new youth representative to potentially work with the new executive director, meet with them, and see how that relationship to help get the word out to more young people can go through working with them, right? Excellent, thank you. And also, all right, a couple quick questions. Let's go rapid go around. I'm gonna, whatever the protocol that the chair is given with the order, we're gonna change that for a second. Bruno, what's your favorite part of Anchorage?
My favorite part of Anchorage would probably be Kincaid. I like running over there, biking over there, all that. It's a great place to be.
Right on. Mika, what's your favorite time of year in Anchorage?
I like the fall because that's when school's starting back up. It's when I also do cross country. It's when cross country's starting back up, and the weather's nice. For me, I don't really like hot or cold temperatures. And so I feel like it's when a lot of people get more involved with a lot of different things.
Right on. Hey, Kennedy, what's your favorite recreational activity in our community?
I think my favorite recreational activity was going to the Boys and Girls Club when I was younger. But also now, since I'm older, it's dance. We did a lot of like things after school and performances for our community, which I thought was really nice.
Excellent. And just, Bruno, did you go to the Spanish immersion from Government Hill onto Romig? Anna? Right on. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to put a little edge onto the suggestion made about the community councils and reaching out to the Federation. I was involved with the community councils when the question was put to the councils of whether councils should have youth members on them. And there was a general sense that, yes, they should. But then there was a pushback by several community councils. Oh, hell no, we don't want youth. And so in the end, what the assembly did, and before any of us were on the assembly, they said it's optional. They caved. They said it's optional. And so if you look through the community councils, you will see a handful of them in their bylaws adopted, as Daryl puts his fingers up, 3 out of 40 adopted the allowance of youth members. I happen to be the president of one when we did. And full participating members. And so the community councils are such an interesting experiment in understanding who lives in our community and what they think about people and their neighbors. So I think you have a question. I have kind of a closing question. We have a few more minutes. Go ahead, Meg.
Thanks. So we often take up, I like to say, public policy doesn't have to be popular in order to be necessary. How do you imagine handling sitting and listening to what could be the public being upset that change is coming? What can you see the value of that being? And do you think you can feel comfortable doing that? Because right, it's a form of conflict.
Mika, I'll start with you.
So I think it's important for people to be uncomfortable. So when you speak to the value of controversial things, for people to, change is uncomfortable most of the time. And so I think when people are uncomfortable, that can be a good sign. As long as what we're doing, we believe is necessary and important. As for me, I would say I'm very comfortable with being at the center of a conflict. Sometimes I can be a little oblivious, and I'm also a very honest person. So I've never maybe had like negative actions really directed at me that I was aware of. But my whole life I've always just kind of spoken my mind and done so with like what I truly believed in. And I think here I can continue to do that.
I think it's the job of the government, even at like the city level, to do what the people need to happen, right? If something isn't possible, it needs to be canceled and so on, whether or not that's a popular decision. Because if something continues without the proper resources, if something continues and it just can't happen, the backlash will be worse. In a situation with that kind of conflict, what needs to happen is all the information needs to be put on the table. There needs to be absolute transparency, and people need to sort of just be given a little bit of time to see how it plays out. Even if people aren't initially in favor of a decision, if all of the information is available, public opinion usually eventually changes. People usually eventually realize why a decision was made, and maybe that can be revised later, but the important thing is what is possible. Uh, I'm comfortable with conflict, and yes.
Kennedy?
I think it's really you just have to focus like on what you at least know is better for them. I kind of see it as sort of taking care of like younger kids. Like you don't want them to slip and fall on ice running. So you're going to tell them not to run. And they're not going to like that you tell them not to run. But in order for them to not slip and fall, they're going to have to not run.
Okay, so I'll ask last question and then we'll do closing comments. So the last question, and this will start with Bruno, is so you saw the application. Why did you apply?
I applied because I want to get involved in more stuff in government later on. Frankly, I applied partially because of debate. There were some people there that I met, especially from Sitka, who were incredible and did an enormous amount of stuff involved in government. And I asked them sort of how they started doing that. And the answer was essentially positions equivalent to this one. And at the time, I was ending my sophomore year, right? I had been a member of my student government freshman year. And I had liked that. And I had been less involved with stuff my sophomore year. And I decided that I was going to see what was available. I saw this opportunity, so I decided to apply.
All right, thank you. Kennedy?
I applied because I felt that more younger people's voice needs to be heard and not just focus on how the adults will feel. Because a lot of the time they'll think that teenagers really don't care, and that's not correct. Because when it comes to things that also affect us, we're going to care, but then we won't have a way to express that if no one actually hears like our voice and what we want to say and how we feel about things.
Thank you. And Mika?
So my friend Jesse Tyrell, who, as I understand, was the last representative, actually brought this position to my attention and said, hey, I think you'd do well here. And at first he was also going to apply, so we had a little bit of rivalry going on. But seeing the work that he's done was really inspiring. And since I'm already working in the community, having an opportunity to become even more connected and bring about even bigger change just sounded really great to me. And I also have a policy of grabbing every opportunity that comes my way. So that was part of it.
Go ahead. Is that everybody? Yeah. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and do our closing statements. We'll start with you, Mika, just a minute.
So I'm really thankful for the opportunity to apply and to even be here. Thank you for, looking through my application and saying like, hey, you might be okay. I do, like I said before, I'll just give you a little resume. I'm a member of student government and student advisory board. I also am in an organization called Anchorage Youth Vote. I'm queer. I like to run. I have, I think, a lot of aspects of my personality being outspoken that would be really beneficial here. And I think that I could do a lot of good in this position and really reach out more to my peers and also become more connected myself in the community. Because I think sometimes I have trouble keeping up with the news or, really taking action. And this is a way that I'm able to do that. So thank you guys for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you. Bruno?
Just to list off what I'm involved in, I'm involved in debate, I do mock trial, I do Amnesty, Key Club, and I'm involved in my school's GSA. I'm bi. I do a few sports, I'm involved in my community. I want to apply just based off of wanting to be involved, wanting to see what I could get done and what I could change. I can't say that I have prior experience in city government, but I can say that I would like to learn more about it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Kennedy?
I'm mostly grateful for getting to know all of you guys because before this, I actually didn't like know a bunch of who was in the city hall. But now I think even if I don't get the position, I'm grateful and I think it'll be beneficial to know everyone. And for me, I'm mostly involved in really everything my mom does because that's how I'm able to do things for the art community because we're kind of the same. And I think for both like poor and black communities and the queer community, I I really and the youth community, I want to focus on those things because there's always like some type of controversy or like there's always something going on. And I think it's important to like focus on those things and help everyone.
Right. Anything else from the members before we wrap up?
Thank you.
We're right on time. Thank you for your time. I'll have a final decision here pretty soon. It's been a laissez-faire process from me. Early, we had lots of input, but then we had to sort through 15 applicants. We're down to 3 at this time. And whether we pick 1 or 3, it's a conversation to happen over the next week or so. You'll be hearing from us soon. And come what may, have a great school year. Thank you. We'll adjourn.